Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our previously recorded webinar on data mirroring, using predictive intelligence to analyze consumption and build a use case for automation on the ServiceNow platform. As always, we ask that you do not make purchasing decisions based off of the content presented during this webinar. Thanks. Enjoy the webinar.
So if you're an existing ServiceNow customer, you might be experiencing challenges with some of your processes as they stand today. A lot of organizations are struggling with delivering better customer care, reducing their security risk, and addressing long mean time to resolution or remediation when it comes to incidents and requests. On top of this, with the shift to a remote workforce this year, we're all asking, how can I deliver better services to my employees to encourage workplace satisfaction and allow employees to be as productive as they can be? And one of the ways that we're doing this here at ServiceNow is by using automation. Using automation, it's possible to achieve outcomes your organization is looking for. ServiceNow customers can use the power of predictive intelligence capabilities. That's actually a module. It's a machine learning engine in ServiceNow to derive key insights on how you're consuming the platform today. By running what we call the clustering solution in predictive intelligence, you can analyze large data sets in ServiceNow and start to benchmark how you're consuming the platform. So some of that information or the insights you can really derive are you automating enough? If you're part of the incident management team, what does the MTTR look like for incidents? How about for requests? How about for calls that are coming to your help desk? And what does your employee experience look like? Are employees able to use self-service capabilities to log requests? If you're part of the security team, you may be concerned with resolving security incidents in a timely fashion in order to reduce your cyber risk exposure. Later on, we'll actually talk about how you can frame a conversation with your C-suite stakeholders internally in order to help you identify what are the key outcomes and priorities that your C-level executives care about. And if security is really top of mind, should your organization be adopting SOAR capabilities to reduce risk? If you pivot over to the network operations center, maybe you have too many events coming through. So you may care about correlating these events using solutions like AIOps and ServiceNow's acquisition of Loom Systems to reduce MTTR and avoid service outages. How does this process look? So let's talk about what this looks like in a tactical fashion. This is a real capability you can use today. This is not something that's conceptual. Predictive intelligence is actually a module that I mentioned. You can turn on the plugin in your pre-prod environment if you're on at least the New York release of ServiceNow. So step one in this process is that you really take your production environment and clone it to your pre-prod instance in order to actually run this analysis. You turn the predictive intelligence plugin on in pre-prod, and you use this plugin to set up clusters against multiple tables. So examples of that could be an analysis on how you're consuming ITSM or ITOM or security incident response. You analyze the cluster output from predictive intelligence to identify areas for improvement and translate those to recommendations. So automation capabilities like security incident orchestration or AIOps for event management and virtual agent for chatbot capabilities can really be mapped as remediation recommendations based on the output from this exercise. The clustering output will actually include a readout of incident volume and MTTR, and we'll show you an example of what that looks like. Add those together to identify how much total time is spent on resolution, whether it's an IT incident, a request, a call, or a security incident. And the next step is to really calculate and benchmark what your cost looks like today. So what is my cost per hour to deliver these various services to the business? For example, if your level 1 incident analyst spends 5,000 hours a year resetting passwords manually at $30 an hour, what does this mean in terms of current cost to the organization to reset passwords? And that's really where you start to benchmark how your implementation and consumption of the platform is today and work on ways to actually implement automation tomorrow to have cost savings. And so lastly, we'll go through how we can actually build a business case based on real dollar savings from both a simple business value analysis as well as some more complex financial models. Let's run through a sample case of how this was conducted as a customer case study. Note that the metrics you see today and customer information has both been redacted from our output. First, we'll go through the findings from a sample cluster output. This example is for incident management, and we really want to understand what are the major clusters of incident types that I'm seeing in my organization. These could be anything. So for example, I mentioned password resets. Could also be onboarding requests or backup failures, just as an example. So the first thing you're going to want to do is run predictive intelligence on any table in ServiceNow, as long as you're looking at a large enough data set. So ideally, we're targeting between 30,000 and 100,000 records for this analysis, and it should be time bound. So maybe we want to do this over the course of the last 12 months, as an example. And again, I just want to reiterate that in order to turn on the predictive intelligence plugin, you need to be on at least a New York release to support this activity. In this sample view, we actually ran clustering on an incident table within the ITSM suite. We analyzed over 40,000 records in a pre-prod environment, and the analysis was done on the short description field. In this case, the output was that we produced 134 clusters. And if you know anything about machine learning, a cluster is basically a machine learning technique that involves grouping of similar data points. So the output of this produced 134 of those clusters based on similar short description fields. So it's telling me now, here are the top incident types that you see based on the like description within that incident. The engine also outputs cluster quality, which actually reflects similarity of the incident short description field. So what we mean by the cluster quality is now I can actually say in confidence that I'm looking at the top cluster types, that the quality is above the threshold that I've defined internally. And so I can actually build a business case based on this output. When we drill into a single cluster summary within the Predictive Intel module, we're actually able to see the actual incident records considered for this cluster. So even though we're abstracted, we can still drill down directly into the incident and just confirm that the short description meets the requirements of what we're trying to analyze. Short description is just an example of a single field that can be used to group like incidents together. And really, the recommendation is that you guys understand your data set best. So you want to expand to include multiple attributes. For example, maybe you care about the category of the incident or the description field or the assignment field. In this example, notice how the password is misspelled, but it's still picked up. Machine learning engine groups based on relative similarity of the incident, giving you accurate results and insight when you run this analysis. When we zoom out of the cluster analytics output, now we're able to take a look at the top clusters that we've identified. So I mentioned we had 134 clusters. We're going to take a look at the top ones, and you can slice this and maybe say, I'm going to look at the top 10% of the clusters produced and analyze these even further to gain some insight. Here's an example of the dominant clusters that were uncovered. The cluster size and duration reflect the total hours spent per incident. So right here, cluster size and duration. For example, for this top one, success factor password reset, on average, it takes 82 hours to resolve. And we see over 70,000 instances of a password reset request happening in our environment annually. So what do we do with this information? Now we can actually propose remediation recommendations. In this case, if we're spending a large amount of time resetting passwords, how do we reset them faster and scale as volume increases? An interesting observation we've noticed at ServiceNow is with folks returning or with folks moving towards a remote workforce, we've actually seen an increase in password reset requests. I think people are more productive than ever. They're resetting their passwords. They're trying to log into new applications that are being spun up to deliver services as folks work remotely. And so now we're going to zone in on how am I actually going to automate those password reset requests. Once we benchmark where we are today and how our consumption looks, then we can actually come up with recommendations of how ServiceNow capabilities can reduce our mean time to resolution or remediation. So going back to this example of a password reset, we can actually position Virtual Agent to intake the password reset request. And Virtual Agent is our self-service chatbot capability. We use it here internally at ServiceNow. It helps me if I'm trying to look for a KV article, for example, internally, or log a request. I'm actually just chatting with a chatbot. And we can also use a solution like IntegrationHub and Flow Designer to hook into Active Directory, or an identity and access management solution, or even SuccessFactors itself to actually reset the password. So now what we're proposing is, let's have a chatbot to intake the password reset request, and then let's use ServiceNow's IntegrationHub and Flow Designer capability to hook into a tool to actually carry out that password reset without an analyst having to pick up a ticket and manually fulfill it. Once we derive the insights as a part of the clustering tool, now we actually focus on translating these into a business case for our internal stakeholders. So we've gotten the technical part out of the way, and now we're going to build a business case. If you are part of the ServiceNow platform team for your organization, this is where you can prepare to have C-level discussions to really understand how ServiceNow will align with outcomes your C-suite cares about. In the current COVID climate, I know we're sick of hearing about this, but unfortunately, this is our new reality. There's been a major shift in the priorities of your C-suite. Your C-suite cares about continued customer delivery and support. They care about reducing costs across the board. They care about how they're going to support a remote employee workforce. And they really want to reevaluate how to continue business in the new norm. So operational and business resiliency is really top of mind. Prepare for these conversations with your C-suite. Ask them about what their initiatives are and their priorities are, and reframe your ServiceNow roadmap for delivering services to power these priorities. This is an outcome-based discussion. I want to emphasize that. Based on real customer conversations that we've had at ServiceNow with customers, we've captured the following anecdotes from the CIO. So we've talked to some CIOs. They've shared with us that they're not prepared for the Health 4.0 initiative. They don't know, and they need to improve or automate antiquated processes to reduce costs. They also don't know how to address compliance and regulatory concerns while still staying agile. So you start to get a sense of what outcomes the C-suite is really focused on, and now you can start to build your case for automation. So here we've got a list of some example KPIs or key performance indicators that are critical to measure your current state, so the before state, and then the after state, in order to validate that your organization is making progress by implementing automation technology. An example of automation impact is the reduction in average duration of incidents and requests. So tying this back to our prior example, how do we reduce MTTR? We recommend solutions like Virtual Agent to shorten the intake time. We use machine learning to auto-assign requests. We use IntegrationHub to orchestrate actions to other systems. And then lastly, we use ServiceNow's performance analytics capabilities to report, benchmark, and continuously measure our KPIs and identify if we're meeting the goals that we set for automation. So far in our business case, we've identified our C-level priorities. We're focused on the outcome conversation. We've positioned automation technology, and we've defined KPIs to measure value. And now we want to start building a financial model to project cost savings. A light business value analysis is easy. So I mentioned earlier that you can take what something costs you today, So the cluster analytics output will actually show you your MTTR, which is your hours worked, times the cost per hour. So again, I gave an example where maybe your level 1 analyst has a cost of $30 per hour to your organization. And you multiply that to identify what your cost is today annually for carrying out a particular incident or security incident or actually responding to an event that's happening with your network operations team. If you roughly want to do a BVA, you can actually assume a 33% or 66% reduction in time. So what that means is if I'm spending 10 hours today on a password reset, I can assume that I might either save 1/3 of the time using automation, or if I go and implement the full suite, which is Virtual Agent and IntegrationHub, then I'll save 2/3 of that time spent. And you can translate that to a rough estimate of hours saved, and that actually translates to cost saved over a potential span of time. So that's a basic outline for a BVA. You can get into a more complex financial model where you start to actually calculate your return on investment, your NPV, your net present value, and payback period in order to scale out over a longer period of time. So you'll see here some examples of a potential business case for automation, where we're saying that we're going to save between 125,000 hours to 368,000 hours annually based on the implementation of automation technology. And that actually translates to a cost savings of between 5 and 10 million over 5 years. This is how you start to benchmark where you are today and where you need to be in order to do less with more. We've had a number of customers run this exercise, and here's what they had to say. So what I found particularly interesting was that one of our ServiceNow sales executive team thought that this was the most customer-centric tool that we've actually ever produced, because it really allows customers to mirror their data and build a real business case to identify areas of improvement where automation is key. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to transition into a demo where we're going to show you what that after state would look like for your organization. So once you've gone ahead and implemented automation technology, what does the experience look like to the end user? So with that, Pranav, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Saira. So I'm just going to share my screen. So let me just take you through an example of the automation capabilities of the Now portal using the virtual agent. So for this, I'm going to quickly take a scenario in which we have Susie. Now, Susie is a sales manager, and she wants to request a group on Microsoft Teams for her team members as a spot for collaboration. Now, the usual flow of request or work would have her go through this catalog of items and capabilities as displayed here on the service portal, which is available to internal stakeholders. Now, technically, this is a very time-consuming process, which has a series of emails or messages on Slack. So now, using Virtual Agent, I'm going to take you through this demonstration of the automation capabilities of Susie requesting a Microsoft Teams. So upon clicking the chatbot, she's initially displayed a message of what is the issue or request that is present at the moment. And since the service portal, as you saw before, is a very form-based request, it involves the user to really find the particular form that they're looking for with much difficulty. So in this case, it empowers Susie to really find what they need using entirely through the virtual agent. She can either type what she wants, or in this case, she wants a Microsoft Teams request. So she's going to click that. And now she's going to be displayed a series of messages requesting certain information from her end, which is very similar to what she would find in the service portal. So I'm going to quickly use a team name. And the agent is actually intelligent enough to recognize certain members that it thinks will be part of Susie's team. So in this case, Susie can accordingly pick and choose who she wants to be part of her new sales team. And finally, an initial message to the team. So as we can now see, she's ended her service request, and the entire process has been done completely through the virtual agent of requesting a Microsoft Teams using entirely the chatbot, which is again very user friendly and saves her a lot of time. And she can further check on the status of the Microsoft Teams request by going on this. And great, she's very delighted that it's already been approved and completed. And she can also further go in to check the status and also the variables that it may have, such as the team members or the initial message in case she wants to change it, as well as the status. Now, to quickly go through the technical workflow of this particular request, I'm going to pass it over to Patrick. Patrick?
Thanks, Pranav. Yeah, that was certainly easy. So before I get into the technical specifics, I would like to share with you the why, right? So this is actually a real use case for one of our ServiceNow customers. American University, just like many of us and all of our organizations, was forced to transform very quickly due to COVID, right? They all of a sudden, rather than working in the office, they were working virtually like many of us are today. And their tool of choice for collaborating virtually was Microsoft Teams. So within the first month of building this automation, they were able to fully automate 150 requests. And the creation time on Microsoft Teams dropped from 29 hours to 8 minutes. So their end users were waiting 29 hours for something that can be very, very quickly automated. Yeah, maybe it needs an approval. Unfortunately, what was happening is, that approval would go out via email. Then we'd have to wait to make sure the approval came back. It was just an unnecessary process and a lot of unnecessary overhead. So we got that team creation time down to 8 minutes. And what this did is it freed up 37 and a half hours. So almost a full-time engineer's work week was freed up by adding this one automation. And obviously, you can read the quote from the VP of Human Resources as well. There was other side effects, such as just a much better employee experience as well. And they used IntegrationHub. They used our Azure Active Directory spokes, Flow Designer, and Action Designer. So all out-of-the-box functionality. And I'm going to share some of those technical specifics with you now. So if we go into Flow Designer, you can see that we have a pretty basic flow. We can see it has a set of triggers and a set of actions, right? And then there's some subflows here as well. So the trigger is that service catalog item. Remember that demonstration that Pranav showed, that was just a virtual agent conversation that was front-ending a catalog item. So we're really here to meet your customers where they're at. Do they want to use chat? Do they want to use the service catalog? Do they want to use mobile? The Now platform can really help you meet your customers where they're at and how they want to interact with ServiceNow and your fulfillment teams. So the first thing it's going to do, it's going to pull in the catalog variables. Those all become reusable data pills, so there's no scripting. All of this is drag and drop. Then there's an if statement, right? So this is going to be an if the user isn't a manager, go ahead and ask for an approval. Susie happened to be a manager, so we quickly bypass that approval. And then we have our create MS Teams subflow. And the reason that we create these subflows is when you're building your automations in ServiceNow, you're going to need this for another project. For example, I had a customer who leverages ServiceNow project management on the platform, and they said, wouldn't it be great if when a project got to the execution phase, we could create a team for that project so we could all collaborate. And they were going to, just create a process for that. And I said, wait, we can just automate that. We can take the reusable subflow and we can use it for this use case as well. So it's going to become best practice when you're building out these automations in your environment. Try to break out reusable blocks of work into subflows. So with that, I will hand it back to Pranav, and then I'll close us out with one more demo. Off to you, Pranav.
Thanks, Patrick. So similar to the previous demo in which I showed where Susie was requesting a Microsoft Teams. So I'm going to show you a similar demo in which now she requires a cloud environment for her team to work. So the digitalization of this entire process through the Now portal. So she can initially launch a stack from the catalog. And in this case, she wants to request a customer WordPress with RDS. And the VA automatically inputs certain data based off of her persona, but she can still add in her team name. And the group, and upon submitting this request, so now what we are essentially doing is requesting cloud resources for the organization without the long review process. So wrapping up this entire digital workflow around this cloud resources and reducing the resolution time from, say, a few days or week to just a few hours. So I'm going to skip it back to Patrick for him to show you the technical details of this.
Thanks, Pranav. Yeah, so when you provision your resources through ServiceNow, we are automatically enforcing some tag data within those resources. And enforcing that tag data allows us to dynamically map your application in near real time. So as soon as the resources get provisioned out in the cloud, we're pushing updates into our CMDB. We're also pushing that tag information. So now with that tag information, we can dynamically map that application. So we're grouping all of the components together and we're providing business context. And the next step in that process is logically to bring in your monitoring data. So we integrate with a number of monitoring tools. We have an open API. We can pretty much integrate with anything. So I'm actually going to simulate a CloudWatch alarm in this environment. So CloudWatch is AWS's monitoring system for monitoring cloud resources. And we're actually going to watch the operator workspace, which is that graphical view of all of your services in your environment light up. Now, traditionally, in some of our NOCs that are less mature, we're swivel screening between different monitoring tools. We're copying and pasting data into ServiceNow. So we're missing a huge opportunity for automation that CA can help uncover. So you'll notice that we've lit up the HA Creative Labs WordPress. If we look at the map, it's lit up as well. And what it's doing is it's showing us root cause. It's showing us the thing in the environment that's having an issue. So now we can route engineers. Maybe we take this process full circle and we actually have an automation in place to resolve this issue. So that's the end of the technical portion of the demo. I'm going to transition one more time into a couple of slides and then we'll do some Q&A. So I'm going to share one more use case around that AI ops story. So Accenture, right? One of our partners, one of our customers. By using ServiceNow's AI Ops integrated with ITSM, Service Management, ITSM Pro, they were able to reduce their mean time to resolve by 40%. So they also deduplicated and correlated a lot of their tickets together. So 90% deduplication correlation rates and 50% configuration item accuracy, right? So it's very important that we are binding a specific issue to a specific configuration item in the CMDB so we can provide that business impact like I just showed you on the map. In the last slide is an engagement that we ran with a customer, right? And this is what they use to roll up. Obviously, the customer information's been removed, but this is what they use to roll up to their C-suite and their leadership in their organizations to show the cost, the operating cost reduction around IT process automation. So I know it's a bit of an eye chart, things like JVM restarts, adding users to Active Directory, Microsoft Exchange, disk cleanup alerts, etc. So 60 IT processes, which accounted for 65,000 requests a year. And these are all things that they said, yeah, we can definitely automate it. Oh yeah, our engineers have a script for that anyway. Okay, so let's put that script in ServiceNow, right? And let's put a front end on it with Virtual Agent, or let's put a front end on it with the Service Catalog. And they were able to reduce $2.2 million in operating costs. So I think anyone would like to come to their CIO with that level of analysis. So lastly, everyone on the phone today, presenters, Saira, Pranav, thank you so much. We'll end with a call to action. You can start using predictive intelligence today in your lower environment to create a business case for automation at your organization, and you can be the individual who gets to report a $2.2 million savings to the CIO.